नमस्कार। G5 बिग डिबेट में आप सबका स्वागत है। आज हम इजराइल और ईरान के संभावित युद्ध पर बात करेंगे। दोनों देशों का मामला गरमाया हुआ है और जो इनका स्ट्रेटेजिक यानी कि भौगोलिक प्रेजेंस है वो बहुत ही महत्वपूर्ण है, ईरान का भी और इजराइल का भी। और इजराइल तो पिछले 1 साल से लगातार खबरों में है और अभी ताजा खबर जो आई है आज, जो अखबारों में भी है और वेबसाइट्स पर भी है, कि इंटरनेशनल कोर्ट ऑफ जस्टिस जो है, जो इजराइल के अखबारों ने छापा है कि शायद नेतन्याहू के खिलाफ और उनके मिलिट्री के अफसरों के खिलाफ शायद कोई वारंट इशू करने जा रहा है। जो अंदर से खबरें आ रही हैं इजराइल के अंदर से, वो ये भी है कि बेंजामिन नेतन्याहू जो कि वहां के प्रधानमंत्री हैं, उन पर दबाव बनाया जा रहा है कि वो इस्तीफा दे दें। बहरहाल अगर अंतर्राष्ट्रीय रिश्तों को देखें तो ईरान के प्रधानमंत्री पाकिस्तान गए थे, उसके बाद अमेरिका ने वहां की तीन बड़ी कंपनी और एक बेलारूस की बड़ी कंपनी पर प्रतिबंध लगा दिया है। रिश्ते जिस तरह से ईरान की मौजूदगी है उससे किसी को समझ में नहीं आ रहा कि गल्फ में क्या होने वाला है। पूरी दुनिया में लोगों की नजर है कि क्या संभावित युद्ध वहां पर होगा या नहीं होगा, और उस युद्ध को कैसे टाला जा सकता है, या ये जो सीरिया में हमला हुआ और ईरान पर जो हमला हुआ उसके बाद ये किसी कूटनीति और रणनीति का हिस्सा है और किसको संदेश देना है, ये बात समझने वाली है। बहरहाल हम लोग चर्चा करेंगे अपने मेहमानों के साथ और इस विषय को गहराई से समझेंगे कि वहां होने वाला क्या है। हमारे बीच में बहुत अनुभवी विश्लेषक डॉक्टर वहील अवाद साहब हैं, आपका स्वागत है हमारे इस कार्यक्रम में। और हमारे साथ जेएनयू के प्रोफेसर जुड़े हुए हैं, डॉक्टर मुदस्सिर कमर साहब। डॉक्टर साहब आपका भी स्वागत है। और हमारे बीच में अंतर्राष्ट्रीय की समझ रखने वाले नमित वर्मा जी हैं, आपका भी स्वागत है नमित जी। और कल्लोल भट्टाचार्य जो कि हिंदू अखबार के डिप्लोमेटिक रिलेशंस पे लिखते हैं और चीजों की समझ रखते हैं, उनका भी स्वागत है हमारे इस कार्यक्रम में। कल्लोल जी आपका स्वागत है। बातचीत की शुरुआत डॉक्टर अवध आपसे करेंगे। हाउ डू यू सी दिस होल सिनेरियो इन द गल्फ रीजन, स्पेशली the Israel and Iran tussle, which is suddenly has cropped up? What do you see diplomatically? Is it going to be really serious?
Well, thank you very much for having you in your program with my distinguished panelists and my good friends. The problem is that first of all, we have to have an introspective looking at the relationship between Iran and Israel. In fact, Iran was the second largest Muslim country to recognize the state of Israel during the Shah time. So when the Shah of Iran was in power, and Iran and Israel were the puppet of the United States, were the safeguarding the American interest in the region, and they had the best relation. And in fact, when Reza Pahlavi also visited United States, the Israeli lobby and the Israeli prime minister wrote a letter to the American president telling him to meet with him because he's a friend of Israel. Having said that, I say 1979, the things have changed because the Iranian revolution has taken over and they closed the Israeli embassy. They kicked out the American spies and the CIA agents from Iran, and they replaced the Israeli embassy with the Palestinian embassy, and they took over the charges of defending Jerusalem and the Palestinian cause ever since. So this had been throughout, and it was a sort of a proxy war fought between Israel and Iran, or a shadow wars, like they have been attacking each other indifferently, covert operation, attacking scientists, killing or targeting somewhere in Iran, or supporting some of the resistance or the forces fighting the Iranian, whether it is the Mujahideen Khalq or it is the Kurdish area in Kurdistan, Iraq, northern part of Iraq, or they started from Azerbaijan or different part where they have been attacking. Now, with the 7th of October onset of the war on Gaza by the Israelis, and the attack on Israel on this Iranian consulate in Damascus have changed the paradigm of the war, and the rule of engagement have totally changed after the 13th of April, when Iran retaliated by attacking inside Israel, targeting military installation. And that is showing a great kind of development, which is dangerous and dragging the whole region into a regional war, because it's not a conventional war or a traditional war between two neighbors. There are not neighbors. There are lots of countries involved. So you are attacking from the sea, and the other one is attacking from the sea. So the chances of accidental attack on other country could retaliate and could cause more complication to the region. We will talk on that later. But I wanted to say that this 13th of April have changed the deterrence of the war on Iran by the Israelis. Like they have told them that now we have a deterrence. We can reach you, we can attack you, we can even attack your nuclear site inside Iraq. So the whole picture have changed. Though the most of the country in the region are not interested in a regional war, including the United States, I think Israel is planning to increase this war because the survival of Netanyahu depends on the forces that he continue this war on. As long as it's on in Gaza or in Lebanon or in Syria or in Iran, he will stay in power.
That's absolutely right. Let me go to Dr. Mudassir. Dr. Mudassir, how do you see this conflict? Especially, do you see this will continue?
See, if we
Dr.
look at the current situation, the war has entered a new phase. As Dr. Awad was explaining, that earlier Iran and Israel were engaged in a shadow war or war by proxy. Now they have decided that they can engage in a direct warfare, which actually threatens to escalate into a wider conflict involving more than one country of the region, including all the countries in between, and other countries, including, for example, Yemen, or for that matter, Egypt, or for that matter, the Arab Gulf countries, who will also be threatened because of the nature of the region, which is very, very highly volatile, which is very explosive. So the continuity of the war with the current situation looks like it will continue until unless both sides, the Israelis and the Palestinians, decide that it is enough and they have to move towards some kind of negotiated settlement of the conflict between them. At this point, it looks very likely that the war will continue. Whether it will further escalate or not, that is a different issue. That we'll have to wait and watch. But the continuation of war in Gaza would mean that the cloud of war, a wider war in the region, remains at this point.
No, but do you see the Gaza war is all right, but I am talking about, do you see the total Gulf region if they escalate something which they are denying, both the countries are denying. But do you think that escalates by Iran or by Israel, or they really intend to go for war, or they will just do this sparkling the whole scenario?
See, the what happened on the 13th April, the Israeli attack on the Damascus consulate, Iranian consulate in Damascus, and then the
Yeah.
Iranian response, and then the Israeli response in return. All the events, the three developments, underline one very important thing, that both these countries, Israel and Iran, also have been restrained in their response, or how they respond. They have been extremely careful and cautious as to how they have to respond to avoid a wider escalation. So at this point, it seems that both these countries are not interested in escalating a war, into a wider war. But the problem is that wars are not necessarily started by planned, developments, planned steps. One accident
Mhm.
and it can lead to a wider war. I mean, look at what is happening in other places. It was not all planned war. It, any accident and it can lead to a wider escalation. So, despite of the fact that both these countries at this point and their external benefactors are not interested, and other regional countries also are not interested in widening the war, but the chances of escalation remains.
Yeah, Mr. Namit Verma, you tell me, don't you think that Iran is restrained because in the complete Gulf region, they do not find any logical reasoning to go full blast war with Israel because they do not want to annoy the US, America, and through America, this because America puts the sanction immediately, and no Gulf region wants to have an sanction regime because of the Iran involvement.
I think the issues which you brought up,
Yeah,
there are different. You've brought up two different issues.
yeah,
One is the possible intimidation of America with its sanctions regime, and the other
yeah,
is the intent for war uh, as decided by the two states involved themselves.
yeah,
I will first address this issue of the intent of war, of going to full-scale war. I just do not believe it is possible in today's day and age.
yeah,
And you see, even when at the beginning of this month, in the first week, when the Iranian embassy was bombed in Syria, and obviously that meant that Iran had to take a stance to show that it had the ability to retaliate. It was a compulsion, a domestic compulsion, and a regional compulsion for Iran. And when Iran did retaliate a week later, then before it retaliated, it made it a point to notify its neighbors up to 3 days in advance. And it issued a statement one day before. It is inconceivable that some back channel was not working, and that some back channel may also have, it is eminently possible that some back channel may even have co-opted Israel into the conversation, that something will happen. And given that you have already bombed the diplomatic premises in a third country, you ought to accept it as some kind of a balancing measure, and leave it at that. The initial Israeli response of shooting down the missiles and the drones, together with Western forces which are stationed there in the Gulf, all that, and in Syria, all that suggested that they were well prepared for the attack that was to come. So there is a big difference between the hyperbole that we get to hear and how we perceive it in a theater like Gaza, and what is actually happening behind the scenes. I do not for a moment believe that Iran wants a full-blown war with Israel. Not today. The only upstarts in the equation are players like Hamas, who forced an issue in October last year. And that, of course, for them, it is a pending event of revenge for several years of repression. Now, that kind of a narrative is the primary problem of what Israel represents. It's a problem which has been created to keep world empires, to keep the relevance of dying empires and emerging empires. And unfortunately, each emerging empire which involves itself in this equation soon finds itself backstabbed by such a volatile concept. The Balfour Declaration, through which the existence of Israel was first conceived, with British blessing, when the British Empire was still the dominant empire of the 20th century. And then the Israelis backstabbed the British. They assassinated their Cairo representative, Lord Moyne, and effectively passed the baton of Western leadership in the Middle East to America. America, all the time prefacing its great dependence alliance with Britain, was very happy to see Britain worsted and the old empire disintegrate in this part of the world. At that point of time, when Israel was born, immediately after the Second World War, the French, who were earlier in occupation of the Levant, the Syria continuum, they were already a dead empire as a consequence of the war with Germany. The Iranian situation at that point of time was with the Americas. Later, at that point of time was with America. But there was the bigger issue of the Ottoman Empire, which the carving up of the Ottoman Empire and which happened earlier in the century, and the creation of these three zones effectively, the Iraq zone, the Syrian zone, and the Saudi zone, all distinct from the old Ottoman Caliphate, and leaving Turkey and Iran already because the confusions arising out of the German support for the Bolsheviks, conditional to the Russians aborting the Triple Entente, whereby that region had been divided between the old empires of the last century. No, you understand. These are empire games. These are empire games, and 100 million Jews and 50 million Palestinians, that's 150 million approximately, in a global population of 7.5 billion. These remain the primary button for global reconfiguration. A smaller button was test fired in Ukraine. If you recall, the Ukrainians were the worst of the lot going after the Jews during the Second World War. The kind of repression that the Ukrainians practiced was the worst experience that the Jews had. And yet, today you have Zelensky and Israel making common ground. So it is not the issue itself, it is who the puppet master is. Unfortunately, for the puppet masters also, they are no longer in control. And we are on the verge of that situation, just as the assassination of Lord Moyne indicated the end of the British Empire. The present uprising in Israel, if Mr. Biden on his impending visit fails to get some kind of a concession or some kind of a 33-member hostage exchange deal or whatever is being talked about, then America risks moving one step further into a situation where the entire Middle East is being forced by the present conflagration to come together. So the great divide which was there across the Persian Gulf between the Arabs and the Iranians, between the Shias and the Sunnis, if that disappears, then it will, with it, Western beverage will disappear. And if these oil powers do decide to continue with China and Russia as they have indicated in the recent past, that could be the final nail in the coffin of Western imperialism in this region and possibly globally. So those are the stakes. Now, those stakes may force them if they are losing out, to press more buttons and ignite a greater war. But no individual player involved over there wants to go to war. 100 million Jews may be belligerent, but they are also, nobody is a fool today. If it is a war between them and the rest, then they are the ones who are going to take the biggest casualty. So that, I think, is it. Let's continue and then
let's continue. Let me come to the Kallol, because Kallol is much aware about the latest happenings. And the latest happening is that today Americans have threatened that we can ban the one battalion, the Nirja Yahuda, which the military of the Israel has reacted very sharply that you can't do and you can't ban. And their military chief has reacted. It means the Kallol, the Americans are restraining the Israelis also by one way or the other, and they are also making Netanyahu and their team to understand that this is not the time to go for escalating the war. What do you say about it? Your voice is unmute, please.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Well, I can explain the American action in this way, that the conflict began between a state, that is the state of Israel, and a non-state actor, that is Hamas. And the state of Israel obviously had nothing to stop it when pursuing its security goals vis-a-vis a non-state actor. And we saw that when you are basically dealing with a state and a non-state kind of relationship, there are no rules to govern either side, because you are dealing with two different entities. So Israeli actions as well as Hamas actions have been both extremely, one can say, irrational. Whether it's the Hamas trigger or the Israeli crackdown, which killed thousands and women, children, and also innocent men. But what appears to be to me is that the problem with between Iran and Israel are not between a state and a non-state actor. Here, in this particular case, it's a problem between two states. And when it comes to state-to-state relation, we have seen, and as you know, we also heard from the panelists earlier, that there is no chance of direct conflict between the two states, because states are always rational when it comes to pursuing their security goals. But the problem in this particular case is that from the 13th of April onwards, this particular phase that we saw, which led to the exchange of missiles, was that it was basically a period in which the two states were made to come close and exchange weapons against each other. And that window has passed. That was a window of escalation that has passed. Now we are looking at our next window, and that may open up if Israel goes into Rafah in a big way, and if Israel follows its or pursues its security interests in Rafah, because that is when again a new wave of mass casualty will take place in Gaza, which is again going to bring in the proxies, whether of Iran or any other country in the region, and then again the escalatory ladder will move to an extent where the states will be forced to act against each other. So we have passed that one window of escalation, and the Americans are obviously trying to prevent that next window from emerging, so that they can stop Israel from getting heavily into that bombing mode for Rafah. Because once that tragedy begins, then it will lead to a very fast escalation and a very swift exchange of words between Israel and Iran, and again that that accidental moment, as Professor Kamar was saying, that moment could just come, once again, and that is very difficult and very, very unpredictable and scary situation.
Dr. Awad, you have spoken, but before we go, you have spoken on a very important point, but I will bring it to that point later on. But let us understand the strength of Mr. Netanyahu. He is the third time Prime Minister of this country. And what the information is filtering out from the newspaper and the media industry, that there is some disliking and dissatisfaction has emerged within that ruling clique. And they want now Netanyahu to go, so that the new establishment takes over, and the signals from across the world which we are getting as a news person, that the powers that be have decided to say goodbye to Mr. Netanyahu. Is it possible that Netanyahu will go easily, or will he revolt, or will he control, or the way he is threatening very loudly to the world that I am a man here to stay? What do you say about it?
Well, I don't think Netanyahu is a man of peace at all. I mean, his campaign from his early years, he has tried to bring down Oslo agreement, and he would teared it and threw it in the dustbin. And his supporters killed Rabin, and because Rabin, he signed the agreement with the Oslo agreement, and we all know how he won the election and how he turned the upside down of the Israeli public, who were 55% during Oslo agreement. You remember, I mean, there
Yeah.
was people who wanted peace with the Palestinians. Now we don't have 10% of Israeli wanted peace with the Palestinians, which is because of the right extreme wing that they have taken over in Israel because of him. So he is not a man of peace. And I remember when I met with late President Yasser Arafat, and I interviewed him first time tenure when he was 1979 and 1997, sorry. I met with Mr. Arafat and I asked him a question. What do you think of Mr. Netanyahu? And I repeated the question 3 times, and he is giving me a look, and he said nothing. I mean, I met also after years, met with the President Mahmoud Abbas, and I raised the same question to him. And after second tenure of Netanyahu, I said, what do you expect from him? He said, talk, peace for talk for talk. I said, that's not what you can expect from a leader who can leading the Palestinian cause for this. So, I mean, he's now a very weak coalition, right-wing coalition, which is an extreme right wing of Israel, in fact, and they have been threatening him. If you don't invade Rafah and continue with the operation, we will pull out and we'll bring you down. The problem for Netanyahu and Israel in general, in fact, that the American and the West, he lost their support. I mean, they start losing support of Israel. The sympathy for Israel have been declining all over the world. You see the demonstration in every capital in the world. You see all the university uprising, all the youngsters are fighting. They wanted an end to this war. You see even the American have been isolated internationally, and even the European. I mean, how long you can blindly support a government which is killing indiscriminately, destroying all buildings, hospitals, killing workers, health workers, medical doctors, and burying them inside the hospital, and killing more than 15,000 children. I mean, every two hours there is a child killed in Gaza. Every 4 hours there is a woman, there is a mother being killed. How long this can go, this carnage of a collective punishment, of a collective killing of the Palestinians can continue? I don't think the world lost their humanity. So we have seen this uprising all over the world. And there was demonstration within Israel, where also they used demonstration to exchange the prisoner. The demonstration before the attack by Iran was very much against Netanyahu to be removed from power. Now they have come back to the street, and they realize that this man does not want to have an exchange of prisoners as well. He's ready to get these people killed to satisfy his government, because A, he having a criminal cases against him in Israel. B, he have a corruption cases where he has taken a bribe of $50 million, according to Israeli sources, from the Qataris, where he gave Hamas the $200 million. So all this fall in the category of he is neither wanted inside nor globally. And I think that the faster he go, the better the region will be.
Yeah, that is your opinion. But what I was asking anyway, I'll come to Professor Mudassir. You tell me, in this region, Professor Saab, what are the options available to Iran right now? Because being a conservative and the oldest historical country, and even they are surviving in the sanction also. The more sanctions are financial sanctions are still there, and they do not know. Economy is not doing good. So, do you think in these circumstances, under the sanction, Iran will go for that kind of a particular escalated war or the imposed war? Will they retaliate in that fashion, the full blown, full blown war? What do you think? You have to unmute. Yeah, please.
Yes, there are two things. One is whether Iran actually want to go into a war. And I think there is a consensus more or less in the panel that Iran doesn't really want to go into a war. So, having said that, whether Iran will, if there is a situation where Iran has to defend itself militarily, I think Iran is a military power. It's a strong military power. One of the, if you look at the region, the Middle East region, among the military powers, you have Israel, Turkey, and Iran, which are strong militaries. And has also, over the years, mastered unconventional warfare. So it certainly has the capacity to withstand aggression, a military aggression. But when it comes to the internal situation in Iran, the economy is not doing well. Iranian economy has suffered because of the international sanctions, the US sanctions especially. Iranian society is, when it comes to the social situation, there has been a lot of unrest between 2019 and what happened during 2022, the protest by Iranian women. If you look at it, there has been a series of protests, including, for example, after the killing of Qasem Soleimani in Baghdad, and then a Ukrainian airline was shot by mistake. There was a human error, and that also led to some protests by the Iranians against the Iranian government and the regime of the Islamic Republic. So if you look at, also when it comes to the political situation, Iran today is a divided house, in the sense that the reformists have been gradually sidelined through elections and through other political maneuvering. It is largely the supreme leader and the supporters of supreme leader within the regime who are also the conservative groups within Iran, who control the government, who control the parliament, who control and the IRGC controls the military and then security apparatus, while part of the economic situation is also controlled by the state and the IRGC. So the internal situation is not necessarily ideal, but Iran over the years have mastered the art of, you can say, survival against unfavorable situation. For the last, if you look at 50 years, 40 years of the Iranian revolution, it has faced a lot of problems. And the whole idea of axis of resistance, of creating and supporting proxies such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, the proxies in Iraq in the form of militias, in the alliance, or one can say the kind of partnership with the Houthis in Yemen, or for that matter Hamas in the Palestinian territories in Gaza, or for that matter even in Syria, if you look at it. So Iran has been able to expand its military presence in several parts of the region, which means that Iran is also prepared to create a situation where it doesn't have to fight inside its own territory, inside Iranian border. It wants, if it has to fight, it wants to fight outside its borders, in other countries in the region. So these are also in some ways, you can say, as a gray zone kind of war, where it doesn't directly has to fight inside the Iranian territory. So despite facing serious internal challenges, Iran has over the years been able to strengthen its military prowess, to strengthen the unconventional warfare, and also develop strategic partnerships with external powers which are anti-US or anti-West, including, for that matter, Russia and China. And we have seen the kind of support Iran has also extended to Russia in fighting the Ukrainian, the war in Ukraine. So what we are witnessing is a situation where both sides, both Israel and Iran, are at strong military. They are strong militaries, and that is one reason why it should worry the global community.
That's absolutely right, Mr. Namit. What Dr. Awad has said and what Kallol has explained, the real worry is that the Iran particularly is being isolated in the whole region. It has its own competition. Neither the UAE is supporting, nor the Pakistan is supporting. Afghanistan is another problem on their border. So why tactically will it not be a wrong move even to fight outside by the Iran, because it will create more problems for him, and Russia cannot support so remotely sitting across so many miles away. Don't you think this escalation will weaken the Iran itself, though it will not strengthen the Israel, but Iran will be in a very quite peculiar situation.
Iran has long been in a very peculiar situation, but
Yeah.
I would not say that they are isolated. In fact, I would say that they are bridging their isolation, at least with the Muslim world in the Middle East
Mhm.
and with the Sunni kingdom of Pakistan. We've seen Raisi there and visiting Pakistan, soft peddling their border disputes, and all those issues. Now, uh, for the first, not the first time, but again, one of those rarer occasions when a Saudi statement, at least, I won't say their overall uh, political stand, but a Saudi statement and the Iranian position are seen to be in some consonance. That the Saudis are in the in a position where they have no option but to take a formal stance against Israel, even if that is a very wishy-washy one. And the same is equally true for the UAE, because these are countries which are touted as great Sunni Muslim countries. Saudi Arabia, of course, is home to Mecca, but they are also lead players in the emerging world order, where there is a mercenary rise in the significance of monetarist pecking order. And to quote one of Israel's greatest fans, Leon Ury, the kingdom of heaven runs on whatever it was, the kingdom of earth runs on oil. So there you have it. Now that is what is now at play. The Jews and the Palestinians have had issues for more than 2,000 years now. If you read the Bible and the Old Testament, that is, then immediately after Moses' crossing of the Red Sea, his first battle engagement is with the Palestinians, whose land he is then moving with his entire with his people to take over. And till then, it is not. Till then, it is the land promised to the Israelites. It wasn't their land, but following their escape from Egypt across the Red Sea, they battled the Palestinians and moved towards that land, towards the Sinai Peninsula. Now, then you come to 587.
No, Namit,
Especially with Iran, because especially
see,
with Iran, the great Jewish destruction by Nebuchadnezzar in 587 AD, and the transmigration of 2 million Jews to what is present day Iraq, which is today an Iranian sphere of influence country, as much in reality. So it is wrong to say that Iran has been isolated. It is just that it is not in consonance with the Western power equation. But there are back channel lines of communication, as was seen during the nuclear talks with America. And I frankly would suspect that this entire ploy, which is being whereby it is being presumed that that the Hamas trigger of October 2023 was an independent Hamas action. That is what the world needs to examine, and which it has glossed over. The corruption charges emerging in Israel, the role of Qatar. If there is a trigger-happy regime in the Middle East, it is Qatar. And it is very seriously invested in the Western economic model. It is amongst the largest, let us say, property landlords in France and across America. So unless people evaluate things in the currency of the day, you will just rhetoric-based analysis is not going to get us a clear picture. But this is a theater which is being warmed up. Should the bigger theater of oil, of Middle Eastern oil, defect to a Chinese-Russian axis, then the West will implode this entire theater. This is a preparatory move which is going on, and that is how I would see it. I don't see the Syrian regime today as a very fundamentalist Islamic regime. It is one which is seeking reform. But all of Africa is seeing like Islamic, let's say, virtually a sponsored campaign for Islamization from which is originating in Qatar, which is not.
No. You have said it, Namiji.
Qatar is the hidden player in this entire operation between Iran, Israel, both. It is the hidden player vis-a-vis their relationship. Right in the beginning, you had asked, I think, Professor Awad about the relationship, and his answer suggested that there wasn't a relationship, or it was so negative that there couldn't be a relationship. But we all know that in today's world, there are several lines of communication. A relationship to build or a relationship to destroy. And on both those axes, the invisible role of Qatar vis-a-vis Iran, vis-a-vis Israel, which we are seeing in the news recently, and vis-a-vis America, which still has a base there. And let us not forget that during the sanctions regime, we know which country was stamping Iranian oil under its sovereign stamp and retailing it to the rest of the world.
No, that's all right. That's all right, Namidji. I would just want to ask Kallol. Kallol, as per the Namidji, the game is in the hands of the US. And US is playing the whole chess within that circuit, or you can say block. Do you think that US will or would like to have this? Kallol has gone. Let me. He's coming. I think his connection is gone. Let him come. Till the time we will discuss with Avatsab. Avatsab, Kallol has come. Kallol, you tell me. I was asking the question to you. Will the Americans want the war to be escalated? Yeah, are you listening to me?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Yeah. Do you think the Americans in this region would like the war to be escalated, or will they control or will they pacify Israel, Netanyahu, not to escalate the war in the Gulf region? That is enough is enough. Do you think will it happen?
Yes, because you have already asked that question previously, that the Americans, what they are telling the Israelis, and that clearly shows that they are desperate to ensure that Israel stays under control. But there is a big
Mhm.
player also in Beijing, which has refused to condemn the Iranian missile attack on Israel. And you may like to remember that Israelis were very unhappy when Beijing refused to condemn that Iranian action. So, to come
Yeah.
back to what Namit Verma has saying about the other part of your, the imperial and the Western chessboard, I would say in case of an open war, this particular angle of the Chinese will come into play, and that could actually become a total confrontation between what Mr. Verma said, the older players and the new empires, and that is also broadening that conflict to a never unprecedented kind of a region. So I look at it from that point of view that China is really quiet right now because they have connected the Saudis and the Iranians, and that, as it was pointed out earlier, that is
I think the connection has gone. Dr. Awad, I just want to know, because there is a concluding part of our discussion. I want to know a very pertinent question. In this whole region, the Americans are very, very agile, very active, whereas the Chinese and the Russians are not very active, or they may be dormant, but their activity is not seen as the Americans' activities are being seen. Do you think why the Russians and the Chinese are silent in this whole region, or not voicing their concern towards Israel and towards Iran and to Lebanon, Kuwait, and so many other countries, the Gulf region? What is the reason? Why this is proactiveness is not there? That is mind-boggling.
Well, I agree with you. Actually, if you look at the American involvement in the Gulf region, when they
Yeah.
have toppled Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran 1951, he was the prime minister 1952, and he was threatening to nationalize the oil and also to sever ties with Israel. That was the time when they toppled him, and that was the first intervention by the American in toppling a democratically elected prime minister of the country. So now we have seen that the United States have done the damages in the Gulf country. And by the way, in 1963, also the American president wrote to the Russian USSR president, and he told him very clearly that this is our custodian area. This is our area of an asset of the United States. Any intervention in this market, we will definitely not hesitate in using a nuclear war. And I think the Russian and the Chinese have been moving very slowly in certain area where they are understanding the American red lines where they will not, despite the American rhetoric of talking of democracy and allowing and spreading democracy, which we have seen. Obama spread the Arab Spring in the Arab world, and he destroyed capitals rather than they have brought the Arab Spring. So I think the American understand, and we understand that they are not. However, the things have changed, and the unipolarity of the world have changed a lot. Now, with the Russia and China coming together, and Iran even part of that, it is a clear indication that the American supremacy is been reducing, and this weathering influence in the region have been witnessed for the last couple of decades. In fact, even the Indian now are moving to fill the vacuum of security in the Gulf region, where the American have failed. However, the American came back into wars, and because the American arm industry only survived on wars and more war zone, so they want to create more war zone. It is in Iran, or is it in Yemen, or tomorrow it is in Taiwan. So that's how they survive. Well, the Americans are not interested in this war, Anil, for two reasons. Because the Iranian have threatened every Arab capital in the Gulf country also that any American military bases fly goes from there or a rocket attack Iran, they will be attacked directly by Iran. There is no hesitation on that part. The second, the more dangerous part where the world is not witnessing is that the Iranian have not used their traditional or conventional weapon, which they having the strategic assets they have. They only used some sort of a kind of a rocket that to give messages to Israel, despite the fact they give a notice of 3 days. Never mind. But now, if Hezbollah and the Yemenis, Houthis, and they start firing at Israel, it will be too late. for any American intervention in the skies to shoot it down, or whether the Iron Dooms can stop it. So there is a question now of global peace and security in the region, which is at stake. Because Israel is an undeclared nuclear state, and Iran can attack Daimuna, which can create an emission of atomic bombs and gases in the region and destroy the whole region, because Israel is a small state. And the Iranian also, if they are attacked, definitely there will be retaliation by going nuclear. So this is a dangerous trend which can be seen in the Middle East. Now, the Russians understand the game plan of the United States, that they wanted to step in back into this region because they have been influencing after the BRICS expansion, after the Silk Route process of the Chinese, after the Iranian deal with the American, with the Russian. Everything is partnered with the local currency, de-dollarization, all this affecting the American, influence in this region. I think that is where the Russian are and the Chinese think that this is not their war zone area, but they're definitely moving slowly to gain more foothold underground.
Thank you, Dr. Saab. You tell me, Professor Mudassir, there is one pertinent question which we have titled also in the program. Though Dr. Awad has agreed in the earlier discussion, that will the Benjamin Netanyahu go or resign, or will he be asked or forced to resign, or will he stay there as long he wishes?
See, as far as the Israeli politics is concerned, I think Netanyahu will eventually be forced out. Through elections or through some kind of political understanding among various factions, political parties, or so on. But that will not happen until unless the war is going on. That is perhaps one of the reasons which Dr. Awad was also alluding to, is that the current ruling coalition led by Netanyahu in Israel is not really very, willing to, end the war. But there is the security implication also, which is important to understand, that the Israeli military and the security, the security establishment in Israel is also so far supporting Netanyahu and the coalition government, because they want to create a situation where the October 7 kind of an event is repeated. So there is, so far as the security and the political goal of Israeli coalition continues in the same direction, the coalition is likely to continue. But the day there is a divergence, is Netanyahu will be forced out, either through electoral process or through the falling apart of the current coalition.
Thank you, Dr. Mudassir. I'll just ask Namit to conclude, because he foresees the many channels. But do you think, Namit, that as Professor Mudassir has said, that technically and strategically, it is not the time that Netanyahu will be eased out? But as far as my information is there, within that Israel, the atmosphere is not very conducive for Netanyahu. There are certain, please.
Israel is, Israel is not just a nation; it's a people, it's a psyche, and they have been positioned there in a manner where they too have no options. Let us not just look at the Arab side of it. The Jews also have no option. They know that that is the only way they're going to survive. Like this conversation about the more militant arms of the military, which are refusing to be disciplined at this point of time. And Netanyahu is supporting them, and the Rafah build-up, which is being talked about, and where we expect some action in the very near future. That is why I had earlier mentioned the Moin assassination. That the situation is identical. At that point of time, the Lehi was the organization which assassinated Lord Moyne. And for 20 years or more, the Israeli government condemned the assassins till it was in the 70s when I think it was Yitzhak Shamir, in whose time the bodies were exhumed in Israel, sent back, and buried in Israel with great national fanfare. And it was said that this assassination was necessary because otherwise the two-state formula would have been implemented in 1946. And even today, this entire Gaza business that is being talked about, the talked solution, is about a two-state solution, which now the Americans are talking. And the Israeli psyche has never been ready for a two-state solution, irrespective of whatever lip service has been paid. Netanyahu is only going to gain in strength as long as this Gaza conflict remains unresolved. Deepening of the Gaza crisis will make Netanyahu's position unassailable in internal politics. And there is no reason why he should give that up. And that is why the Rafah buildup is happening. Even the talk, which is the latest that we hear, is that Egypt is offered to mediate and some kind of a deal is being worked out, that Hamas will yield 33 prisoners. That even that is not quite a ceasefire. That will buy Hamas time so that Rafah is not attacked instantly, and they will be able to move their assets out. But domestic politics and domestic pressures will not settle for 33 hostages only. There will be demands for the rest, and given the Israeli psyche, when all the rest have also been freed, then they will say, now we are free to wipe them out. So Israel domestic politics and the psyche of a Jewish state, which is very different from what was initially planned, like the great difference between Ben Gurion and Weizmann, for instance. That is where it was Ben Gurion's idea of a Jewish state. The minute you bring in a Jewish state, you bring in the survival issue, wherein they have no option but to keep their belligerence up. So Netanyahu.
No, but Namiji, you tell me right now, because I am just running out of time. You tell me, in the given scenario, will the Netanyahu stay or will be eased out?
He will certainly stay.
Done. Thank you. I am just finishing the program. Mr. Mudassir, thanks a lot. Dr. Ahmad, thanks a lot for the nice discussion. And Mr. Namit Verma, thanks a lot. हमारे सारे विशेषज्ञों की राय ये है कि अभी जो है ये कॉन्फ्लिक्ट जोन ऐसा ही चलेगा और लड़ाई की संभावना, पूरी लड़ाई की संभावना कम नजर आती है और नेतन्याहू भी शायद चलेंगे। ये डिपेंड करता है वहां की अंदरूनी राजनीति पर। बहरहाल ये बदलेगा क्योंकि विश्व का परिदृश्य लगातार बदलता रहता है। हम जैसे भी नई खबरें आएंगी और नए समीकरण उभरेंगे आपके सामने लेकर के हाजिर होंगे। तब तक के लिए धन्यवाद, नमस्कार, खुदा हाफिज।